Yeah, my name's Andrea Haynes. I'm a retired railway person. I worked in the railway industry for 34 and a half years, and most of my career was working on projects looking at how we turn what we need to do into reality. So I now work with the Central Council on youth ringing. So my work group is very much focused on what we need to do to support youth ringing. We're not kind of teaching ringing, we're providing the infrastructure to enable young ringers to be able to find information and leaders to be able to find information, so that they can help themselves. So lots to do.
Can you tell me a bit about your own ringing background? Like, how did you get into ringing and how you got to this bit now?
Okay, well, it's hereditary. My parents met through ringing when they were teenagers. My husband's parents met through ringing. Obviously, we met through ringing. We met in Sheffield, actually, at St Marie's, where my son and his friend Barnaby now ring. So both my kids ring as well. So when I retired, it gave me the opportunity to do some work for the benefit of young ringers, because when I was working I didn't have the time or the headspace to do that. So having worked in projects, Tina Stecklin, who's the Central Council President, sort of sidled up to me and said, "You do projects, don't you?" And I was quite surprised at how transferable my skills were from railways to bell ringing. So that's how I came to be involved in the project. I also run the youth group for the Coventry Guild as well. Again, when my kids did it, I didn't have the time. So I'm now doing that because it's something I just want to support, make sure happens.
And so, can you kind of introduce the Central Council for people who might not know what it is?
Sure.
What's it all about?
Okay, well, across the country and to a lesser extent in other countries, there are sort of geographical associations and other associations such as student ringing and some elite societies, and they all do their own thing. The Central Council is a leadership organisation that does stuff for all ringers that is much better when you've got a sort of oversight view. It doesn't tell people what to do, but it provides leadership and guidance. And during lockdown, for example, it was the body that was saying, you can do this, or you can't do the other, and it provides helpful guidance on things like safeguarding, belfry upkeep, that sort of stuff. When it's useful to have an oversight view. We're starting to change slightly. The work groups are becoming more professionalised, and the sort of websites we're producing are pretty decent, actually. And we're actually going to be employing a couple of people to do roles which we've not done before. So the leadership team are working with an HR specialist to make sure we do that right. So yes, it's very much a leadership and oversight body for ringing to provide the framework in which we all exist.
So how long have you been involved with the Central Council as a work group leader?
I'm trying to think. A couple of years, I think. I've been to 2 annual general meetings, so yes, it's just quite good really, because the first one was in Exeter, which is where my family come from, one side of my family. The second one was in Sheffield, and I've got a house there, and the next one is in Rugby, where I live. Brilliant. So fantastic. I'm actually stepping down as work group lead at the end of the year, because we get to the point where the project phase is over, and that's my skill set. So I shall be towards the latter end of the year handing over to someone who will look after it in the sort of business as usual phase. But I shall still keep an eye on the projects side of the house.
So obviously we're here today to talk about young ringers. I read the 2030 business plan on the website, and the statistics on there show that under 40s only make up about 15% of all ringers at the moment, and over 60s over half of that. And then you look at 1988, where those over 60s now were the under 40s. So can you first of all explain to me any reasons why there's been a lack of recruitment of young ringers at all in the period from there?
I think there's a couple of main drivers that we're trying to address. We can't change them, but we're trying to find other ways. One is church attendance going down, and it really, back in the day when my dad was a kid, for example, in Kislingbury, when he was in the choir, his voice broke and they went, "You're no use to us now, pal, off you go up the tower." And that happened, most churches got their recruits from the church. With church attendances going down, particularly with young people, that avenue of recruitment has closed. There's still a few, but not many. The other thing is that the young people have so many other interests. And bell ringing has always been a bit niche. I always think it's so uncool that it's cool. That's how we kind of sell it. You don't want actually to be like everyone else. And one of the Central Council's slogans is "Dare to be different." And I really like that because it is niche. And actually a lot of people who get into it think, "Oh, actually it's a lot harder than I thought, but I really like it because it's a bit nerdy," and you can take it to the nth degree. So some kids, once they get hooked in, they just become obsessed. But yeah, I think the reason, those two reasons are the key drivers for the fall. Another interesting sort of factoid is that we did a straw poll at a competition last year or the year before, and 80% of the kids in the room had parents who were ringers. So it's the non-ringing. I don't think we have a problem with recruiting kids from ringing families. It's sort of supplementing that, the muggles as we call them, from outside the ringing community that we're really focusing on.
How have your work groups for recruiting young people, what have you done so far to make progress? I know you had a presentation you did at the most recent AGM. What has been your progress from then on so far? Okay, so we've got a number of projects either in flight or in being scoped out at the moment. So one of the sort of main pieces of work we're doing is what we call the Young Ringers Hub, and it's kind of, to use our slogan, a one-stop shop for young ringers from school age to around 30. But if someone's 31 and they want to come and join you just think, "Oh, yeah, that's fine." So the Young Ringers Hub consists of a number of sub-sites. Sort of the overall page will be all branded sort of Central Council, but a bit brighter, and it will have sort of general information, news flashes and that sort of stuff on the sort of main website. The sub-sites are around a sort of very specific at a particular demographic. So we've got university ringing, we've got under 18s ringing, we've got a whole section around resources, and there's another one around sort of developmental pathways. The first one, university ringing, is almost ready to launch. That is picking up on a site that was developed probably in the 90s or probably 2000s actually. That was very, very good, but it's a little out of date and hasn't been updated because the lady that ran it has now got a family, so she doesn't have the time. So we're sort of bringing it into the Central Council suite of websites, and that basically has everything that universities need in terms of resources, and sort of examples, case studies or whatever, plus a link for each society. And where there isn't a society, say in a big town like Southampton, in fact they do have one, in Northampton, Northampton's a great example. There's links in there to enable young people to find somewhere to ring. So that's the first one. The next one is under 18s, so we're going to do there's currently a national competition that runs every year that lots and lots of youth teams go to, but we don't have a national network of youth teams, so we're creating that. And there's also as part of that is going to be a load of stuff about schools outreach, uniform groups, and some bell clubs and all that sort of stuff. So that's the next piece. The resources bit we're kind of doing as we go along, so we find a useful link, and we'll probably put this interview on there, for example. So it's a place where leaders and young people can go and find what useful information. I would like to run a bell club. How do I do it? I would like to organise a tour. Here's some examples. And the final piece, the jigsaw hasn't even
got off the ground yet, and that's all about once we've got these young people in, how do we develop them into excellent ringers? Because there's what we call the red zone, which is once you've learnt to ring and you become more proficient, it's somehow quite difficult sometimes to get beyond the capabilities of your local ringers, your local team. So this is all around using centres of excellence to develop young ringers beyond what they could do locally. But that's kind of lots of great ideas, but we haven't done anything about it yet.
So, yeah, you've got lots of things coming up. What is your schedule for 2026 in terms of getting these projects going?
The Young Ringers Hub itself will probably be launched around Easter with the first 3 pieces of the jigsaw. We're aiming to launch the university ringing site by the end of January, so we're nearly there. We've got probably be February realistically, because we've got it out for review at the moment. We've had lots of really good feedback and a few really helpful suggestions. No one's come back and said this is rubbish, so that's good. That's a relief. And then the next piece of the jigsaw, the under 18s, we've got a big call on Sunday actually, which we are basically talking to all the youth leaders and explaining what the site's all about, getting their input. And we've got a really neat form that people can fill in, and it goes straight into our repository, and then we can create profiles for all the youth teams with their mascots on and stuff like that. So that'll be fun. So that'll be Easter-ish. The resources for leaders will probably follow quite soon after that, because it's just collecting links to other stuff. And then the development pathways, we'll scope it out and get it moving by the end of the year.
I think one of my biggest questions is, it's been a while that young ringers' numbers have been going down.
Yeah.
Why is it now, rather than earlier or later, that you're deciding as a council to bring these initiatives forward?
I think it all came out of a sort of reorganisation of the Central Council and its role. It hadn't had such a sort of proactive role. That sounds like they work proactive, but they didn't have initiatives to sort of move things forward, and it was the declining numbers of ringers, church clergies and all those sort of things came to a sort of critical point, and the council said, actually we need to lead on this because it can't be done locally, and so it's kind of expanded its role, and because we've had to increase the charges that associations pay as well, which has been controversial, but if you want things doing, it does cost. And so we've had to expand the amount of money we spend. So I think it got to the point quite a few years ago now that we had to do something. And we've got other work groups around recruitment and development and sort of environments to make ringing a more attractive place. So I think there came a boiling point almost of like, if we don't do something now, ringing will not die out, but it will be in trouble. So Ringing 2030 was the aim, to have everything in place by then. It was put together a few years ago now, and I think one of the reasons why Tina wanted me to do the Young Ringers one is she knew I'd crack on with it, which I have, and we've done a couple of new things for council, which was we employed students last summer to do some website work, and that's been brilliant. So yeah, that's so I think we couldn't leave it any longer. We've kind of been feeling as we go as to how we do this, and yeah, we've sort of got to the point now where we're actually starting to deliver. So hopefully that will help. But the other thing we're doing to supplement all the infrastructure is, once we launch the Young Ringers Hub, there'll be a massive PR campaign. It will be all around, we'll make sure that there's articles in every journal possible, and we cross-post all the socials. We're going to do some flyers that will be sent to every sort of church, basically, and we'll make sure that everyone knows about it, because I think the biggest risk for me is you do all this work and no one knows about it. So making sure that that's out there. And the other thing is, when if we do all this information specifically for young ringers, we can then make it available to people that are hosting a scout group for a night and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's the plan.
Nice. And are you worried at all about how all of your promotion might go? Are you worried it won't be as successful as you want it to?
There's always that risk, and there's only so much you can do. I think the key thing for me is making sure that folks know about it, because we've done soft launches we did an interim Young Ringers hub, but no one knew about it. It was just a case of, we got a few bits of information, so we just bunged it on an interim website, and very few people know about it. But it was more for my benefit. If anyone asked the question, we could say, here you go, have a look. So I think to mitigate that risk, we just need to make sure as many people know about it as possible. And the other major risk is making sure it is stuff getting out of date. So the work group doesn't go away once we deliver. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm handing it over, is that my skill set is projects, not running the day-to-day. I can do it, it just doesn't float my boat.
So, on a personal level, as a bell ringer yourself, what would it mean to you to see a lot more young ringers becoming bell ringers and competing in competitions and learning difficult methods? What would that mean for you?
Well, I'm hoping that it will be successful. I mean, for me, I'm passionate about ringing. It's been my life. I always describe it as a way of life rather than a hobby. It really is. Certainly my kids feel that too. I just think I love to see young people ringing. They make the best ringers because they're like sponges. They take it all in, and just seeing young hundreds and hundreds of young people at the youth competition is just amazing, and that has spawned more and more groups. And last year I helped a couple of groups set up that hadn't had a group before. And it's not about the competition. It's about, it's quite nice because one of my groups won last year and they loved it. But yeah, it's about creating that nucleus of young ringers. So for me, it's the real win is seeing more young people and then become leaders as well. Because one thing that's great about ringing is it's age agnostic. If you're a bell ringer, you're a bell ringer. It doesn't matter how old you are. There's some old fuddy-duddies that still think that young people shouldn't be in charge, but I think it's great. But more young people in charge and driving things forward, because that's a lot of the issues in some places. You get old fuddy-duddies in charge. The young people don't feel valued or whatever. And I think it's really important that youngsters don't take over, but provide the sort of bulk of the horsepower in a group. But I think a lot of youngsters like the fact that it's not all people their age. If there's 2 or 3 young people and some older people, having that mix is brilliant. It's really, really good. But you just need to increase the number at the lower age end, because sometimes I lower the average age, which is worrying.